Hello there, and welcome to Marketing Room 101, the podcast where I invite marketers to join me for a good old rant and give them the chance to banish one thing from the industry forever. I'm your host, Ben Norman, Strategy Director at Principles, the agency that builds unforgettable brands, and you're joining me this week for my most unleashed and unreasonable guest yet, Mick Mahoney. I was introduced to Mick by previous guest Kev Chesters, as the two co-authored The Creative Nudge together, and they've worked together in some of the world's biggest agencies, including being the CCO and CSO together at Ogilvy. Now recently Mick has cheated on Kev and written his first solo book, The Complete Creative Director, which was released in the past few weeks, and he's also working on building the first ever proper professional training program for creative directors. You'll notice in this episode Mick makes a completely unreasonable request about what he actually wants to banish and pulls absolutely no punches in his takedown of the many enemies of creativity. But maybe that's what you get when you invite somebody to be a guest on your podcast who's literally written a chapter in a book about the power of being unreasonable. So here's a conversation I very much enjoyed with Mick Mahoney. Mick, welcome to Marketing Room 101.
Thank you, mate. Pleasure to be here.
So I think listeners will like to know that this is actually the first episode I've recorded in shorts, and it is the first in that there London, because it's absolutely baking down here and we don't really get much in the way of sunshine up north. So I've made a special trip just for you, mate.
But nice legs, actually. Very nice.
Thank you.
Surprised to see them shaved, but...
So, Mick, to kick us off, can you please describe the room to our listeners? What's it like in here in Marketing Room 101?
Well, it's my front room.
This is your front room?
This is my front room.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're sitting on the sofa.
Yeah.
There's a black smoke glass coffee table between us. And I'm sitting on a Eileen grey suede chair because I haven't got a proper desk or a proper chair to sit in.
Okay.
And this is my office. What I've got is something that my daughter calls my airline dinner tray from IKEA. It's an orange little tray and you pull it up to your chair and you sit and work on it. Because I just couldn't bear the idea that I actually had a proper fixed office in my house. I didn't want to give over any space to this sense that I actually had an office with an office chair and an office desk and office accoutrement. So it always just feels like you're just sitting in my front room.
So when you were describing this, I thought it was going to be one of those cushioned things that you put on your lap to eat your dinner off, but it sounds quite similar to that.
I think I might give that a try, actually. I quite like the sound of that. No, it's quite comedic. It's even got a little plastic attachment where you can put your coffee cup because there isn't enough room on the top for more than a laptop.
So is that how you work? If you are at home, that's how one of the most successful creative directors in UK advertising history creates his ads when he's at home.
It is. Yeah, with my wife constantly popping in, having a go at me for not doing something.
I think that's the problem when you're working from home, isn't it? No matter how much we all know that when you're working from home, you are working. And I'm not saying that people who work from home don't get work done, but the difference is you can do chores. Physically, you are there and available.
Yeah, you're available, but anyone kind of knows when you're really deep into a project, you're almost anywhere but where you are. You're a million miles away in your brain somewhere. Yep. And I spend most of my day, because I write a lot now with books and talks and coaching and stuff, I spend a lot of time in my head. You know, my wife's always complaining that you're not actually ever in the room, are you? You're way off in your head somewhere. And that's true. So I actually think if it was quiet, I could sit on a bus and write. You know, I could sit at the end of my road and write. And like I said, I just hate the idea, having spent, over 25 years in offices, the thought of imposing an office in my house seems counterproductive. But what I miss, though, terribly, is being around other people. So I think creatives need two spaces. And I think the whole kind of open plan thing is to everybody's detriment. Yeah. And I think you need two sorts of spaces. You need somewhere quiet to sit and think and go deep into your head, because that's where the real creativity happens. And you need collaborative spaces, because sometimes you do need to just bounce ideas and chat and get everyone together and think things through, because that's such a great creative accelerator. And every creative process needs both those states. One of the quotes from my second book, from Chris Beresford-Hill, the global CCO at BBDO, who said that The Sopranos wasn't written in an airport lounge.
Yeah.
And it's so true. When we were talking about sort of spaces that we all need, and there wasn't a single creative director that I've ever spoken to that has said, no, I prefer open plan. So if the most important department that creates the product effectively, that we all collectively sell, is in a suboptimum space and actually having to do things despite the environment, as opposed to because of it.
Who are we designing the environment for?
Exactly. Well, I'm not sure what the benefit of all this is. So anyway, that's why I sit quietly in my front room on my own for long periods of time.
With your dinner tray.
With my dinner tray.
So, Mick, I recently interviewed Kev Chesters, your longtime colleague, friend, and co-author on The Creative Nudge.
Complete charlatan, Kev.
So after I'd interviewed Kev, he introduced us. And I've got to say that whilst I knew you'd had a decent career, when I started digging, I was both shocked and a little bit depressed that I looked at just how much you'd done and are continuing to do, because it's quite a feat. So, dear listener, to give you an idea in numbers, Mick has over 30 years experience in the industry, in which time he's won over 150 awards, including a Cannes Grand Prix, as well as more Lions, pencils and arrows than you could fill a skip with. He's been creative director of 7 of the UK's top most valuable brands, CCO of the 3 most successful network agencies in the country, helped Ogilvy go from minus 35% revenue to plus 70 by winning 12 pitches in 12 months, wrote an ad that John Hegarty said was in the top 5 ads that defined BBH, won Campaign's top creative director at 3 different agencies, co-wrote 1 best-selling book, released another just now, and is working on more. So what I want to know, Mick, after all that, you seem to have the same energy and drive that I would assume that you had when you first started in this business. Where does that come from, and what makes you keep coming back day after day?
I actually think I've got more energy and drive because I'm much clearer on what it is I want to achieve now. So I think when I first started out, it was really simple. Do really good ads, win awards, get well known, earn more money, right? That's the status quo for young creatives. The more good ads you do, the more awards you win, the more they pay you, the more you'll obviously get. So the first 10 years of my career, I just focused on that. I just didn't care about anything but that, and you're so selfish. It's that sort of striking mentality, I don't really care about anything but that. Because that's the system, right? I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever. I meant a judgment on it, but that's the system we've created. And then you get to a certain point and you think, right, well, I want to be a creative director now because that's the next growth target. I've got to be a creative director, but I've got to accelerate through that quite quickly. I've got to be an ECD before too long, because if you're sitting around being a creative director forever, people think you haven't got the chops to be an ECD. And then who wants to be an ECD when you can be a CCO, right? And took every opportunity to get there. And I'll be honest, there's a fair amount of fortune in all of this. Things sort of came up at the right time. I had some really good people that believed in me, and it sort of helped my career kind of move forward. So whip through the first sort of 25 years, and I get to being the CCO at Ogilvy. And actually for Ogilvy in London, it was a bit of a show of a business at the time. Charlie Rudd became CEO, asked me if I'd come and be the CCO, ummed and ahed a bit. And he said, look, we're going to build our own management team. It's going to be fun. At the very least, it's going to be fun. He said, you can bring in whoever you want as your CPO. So I brought in Claire Donald that I'd worked with before, was brilliant. He said, I want to bring in this guy, Kev Chesters, as CSO. And that's when I met Kev for the first time. And we just got on like that straight away. And that was amazing. Like for the first couple of years, 12, 18 pitches, £250 million worth of new business. We got it up to sort of in the running for Campaign Agency of the Year. It never happened before. It was like all your stats before, just tons of stats of things they'd never done before. It's best performing office in whole of WPP, etc., etc. So I had sort of one of those kind of epiphanies, like a moment. And I suddenly realised that I'd spent my entire life with the word sort of creative somewhere in my job title, certainly my job description. And I realised I didn't actually know what creative meant, because it's one of those words, isn't it? What does it mean? What does creativity mean? You ask 100 people, you get 100 different answers. And I just thought, how can I be this person that leads agencies and clients and, as a spokesman for the industry when I can't really clearly articulate what creativity means?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just suddenly, everything changed. And I realised that actually what I really wanted to understand was what was creativity, and how can I put creativity in more people's hands? How can I make creativity more accessible and understandable to more people? How can I make more people feel more confident in being creative? It was like a moment where my upbringing intersected with the life I created for myself. And I didn't grow up knowing that you could be creative. I didn't grow up knowing that you could have a creative career. It wasn't something that we all sat around at the dinner table and discussed. And what form of creative expression do you think you'll want to follow, young Michael? I don't remember that conversation. Not that there's anything wrong with my upbringing. It was lovely. But it just wasn't my background. It wasn't anything my school. And actually, I realised that I was super interested in everything that was interesting. But then that way of teaching, where the teacher tells you stuff and you've got to write it down, these dates and remember. And it's like, honestly, it just all went, and I just didn't understand it anymore. And I realised that happens to so many people. And it's maybe just our brains work differently, right? Because we see the world slightly differently.
Yeah.
Because we haven't let go of that creative thing that's in us. You know, we didn't allow school or society or everything else to deny us the pleasure of being creative, expressing ourselves creatively. And then I realised what a wonderful thing to be able to go on to do, to write about creativity, encourage people to be creative, giving talks to companies or colleges or whatever about, you know, how to bring creativity back into their day and reassure them that they're born creative. We're all born creative. It's an innate skill. What a wonderful thing to do. And it's the only thing I've ever been any good at as well, which helps.
Yes.
And I just really, really enjoy it. So that's where the passion comes from.
It's quite a unique thing for a senior creative person to do, to essentially say, I'm going to be very generous. I'm going to give the tools away, as opposed to hiding it.
I think that's a great observation, actually. That's one of the things that made me want to do my whole career. In common with every creative director ever, I felt like I was making it up as I went along. Every single creative director will go, oh yeah, I thought that. Because there's no sort of job spec. There's no understanding of what you need to be good at. No one ever asks you if you've got the right set of skills and the right behaviours to actually be good at your job. You don't even know yourself what they're supposed to do. I reckon it took me 2 to 3 years to understand how to be a creative director, 2 years to learn how to be an ECD, another 2 years to learn how to be a CCO, right? There was no one to help you. There was no coach. There was no book. There's now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's convenient.
We'll come to that. But there's just nothing. No one's ever written the book that just explains what it is to be good at this, because all creative directors don't share for the reason exactly what you just said, is they're not going to give away a competitive advantage. It's been so hard to learn that stuff. They've made so many mistakes to learn that stuff. It's engendered so much anxiety and it's been so difficult. In all honesty, as you said, I was on the campaigns list of top creative directors in 3 different agencies. That's never been sort of surpassed as a thing. And yet it almost sort of compounded my anxiety.
Yeah. There's a lot of weight on you then, isn't there?
Everyone always thinks the best thing to do is to win the award. It's one of the worst things to do, because you then have to win another one, and you have to win another one. And if you ever stop winning them, you've lost it.
Yeah.
You're done. You're finished. So if you get on the campaigns like top creative directors in your first agency, and then you move, you don't get on the next one, it's finished.
Regardless of all the conditions that are out of your control, what clients are you working with, all that sort of stuff, right?
All that stuff. So actually, there's so much anxiety wrapped up in it all that you're just actually desperate for someone to explain, talk to you about it, give you the benefit of their knowledge and experience. And it always struck me that that's something for the industry to be slightly ashamed of. The most significant job, arguably, in the industry, and we don't seek to professionalise it. We're $1 trillion business, and we haven't sought to professionalise the most significant role in that $1 trillion business. We're expecting someone with no training, other than to do great work, be a creative director.
What's that mean?
What do they do? Just shut up and get on with it. Just be a creative director.
Yeah, manage all these people, manage this whole team.
And so actually, what I've realised throughout my whole career was I enjoyed the nurturing and the creating the environment more than I enjoyed anything else. And I just thought, the more senior I got, the bigger the agencies got, the less honest I was able to be in that role. And I figured that maybe there just wasn't a role for me anymore in an agency. I had to step out of an agency to be able to be more value to more people in more agencies.
So you've led us on really nicely by sort of framing the problem there to the book. So you've got a new book out, The Complete Creative Director. I've read the book, and I have to say I have one bone to pick with you. It's one issue. And I think that's that the title should be The Complete Creative Agency. Because what you've written, I think, is so relevant to every single aspect of the running of a creative agency and the importance of the role of the creative director at the very heart of that. I would say, yes, if you're a creative wanting to be a creative director, it'll be incredibly useful. If you're already a creative director, incredibly useful. But there's so much that can be applied by people outside of that reading it as well about what the role of a creative director is. But what I want you to tell me is, in a nutshell, sort of who is the book for and why did you think it needed to be written?
I'll start at the end. It needed to be written because no one had ever written it. It's as simple as that. You know, all of that information just didn't exist in one place and had never been written by anyone with my background or my experience. And it felt to me like kind of duty to write it. If I had all these beliefs that we weren't helping to professionalise creatives, you know, we weren't looking out for the burnout that happens, we weren't looking out for the anxiety, we weren't looking out for the career development of all these brilliant young creative minds. Can't sit on the sidelines and complain about it unless you're willing to jump in and do something. So That's why I wrote it. Who it was for, actually? Everyone in a creative leadership position.
Yeah.
Because the point of the book isn't, oh, that bit's for a creative director, that bit's for a CCO. It's written for the human condition. Every aspect of the role, whether you're engaged in that bit right now or next year or last week or whatever, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
This is everything that everyone in any kind of creative leadership needs to understand. How to work with other creative people, how to delegate, how to build trust.
It was impossible to do the role without it well, isn't it?
It's completely impossible, but it doesn't stop like 90% of creative directors operating that way because they haven't got frameworks. Go, I see. So if I just did that, and half the time it's having a framework. It's why people go to therapy. Therapy doesn't solve anything, but what it does do is it gives you a framework to make sense of the world around you, and that's what the book is. It's sort of like here's a best practice, if you like, something to work from, and to also know sometimes just to reassure you that everyone feels like that.
Yeah.
Or everyone makes that mistake, or it's just helping create a framework for you to look at and go, God, that just makes a bit more sense. But the secondary audience. So Kev wrote the foreword.
Yeah.
Only because he had the hump that I was going to write a book without him. So to sort of keep him happy.
He had to have his name in that book somewhere.
Oh, he did. Yeah. And I've got quotes from him in the book, and he wrote the foreword, and Kev's completely imprinted in this book.
Yes, it's written with essence of Kev Chesters.
Oh, definitely. Essence of Kev Chesters. He read the first draft, and he said, funny enough, similar to what you said, this book isn't just for creatives. He said this book is for everybody. Specifically, this book is for planners who want to understand how to build a great relationship with a creative.
And the fact that you have people in the book commenting from outside of a creative department. This isn't creatives just talking about being a creative director. This is such a wide view of what a creative director's role is in the agency. You've got finance people in there. You've got CEOs, people running the business, people working in the creative teams outside of it. So I thought
that was really important. Yeah. So not just have creative directors talk about being creative directors.
Yeah.
I wanted a really, really broad view because it is such a broad role. I think Bill Scott, our CEO at Droga 5, he said it's the most polymath role in the industry. And it is. And you have to understand so many things and bring so many different things into play to be a good creative director. It's not possible these days to not be the person responsible for building great relationships with clients.
Or that the job's not profitable because you've gone too far with your creative ideas that aren't all of a sudden within scope, or you've blown the budget.
If you don't understand the basics of how an agency finances itself, don't be surprised when you're not profitable enough to be able to hire a new creative team.
Yep.
All these things, no one teaches you. You learn by making mistakes. I don't think you have to learn by making mistakes. I think you can just learn by somebody explaining it to you, and you just get better at it.
Only learn as much as you can from other people's mistakes, right? Because you will still make your own.
I talk about lots of mistakes in the book.
Yeah.
I'm very honest about the fact that I was terrible when I first started. My policy was kind of slash and burn, just because that's how I've been as a creative.
So the time has come for you to banish something from the marketing world forever. I would like to know, please, Mick, what is it that you would like to banish?
I've got a whole list of things I want to banish, in truth. And I'm a big fan of being unreasonable to a positive end. So I know I'm not allowed all 5 of them, but I'll go through them.
So we've got 5. We're talking through 5. This is good.
We're talking through 5.
I think if it makes you feel any better, I keep a list on my phone where I probably have about 25 things. And about 25 that I'd like to. Yeah. So we're talking short list. This is the pitch process. We've done the RFI. We've got the 50 things.
Yeah. This is the first creative thing.
This is the first stage now. We're down to 5.
Honestly, a few things make me do I react more viscerally to than when a business puts their brand values on the wall in vinyls.
Yes.
In a jaunty typeface. When you go into most brands, they've got these 4 brand values. They tend to be things like curious, creative, like collaborative, joyful, fun, committed.
Honest's always there.
Honest, that's right.
Honest, yeah. Which is also code for don't be a dick.
Yeah. Kevin and I often play the antonym game when we go into them and say, well, as opposed to unhappy and dishonest. Anyway, so the same set of words in a jaunty typeface, in a big shiny vinyl, get put on the wall. And whilst it's funny and it's stupid and it irritates me, it's actually kind of a serious thing because that's how people view culture. right? That's how transient culture is to most people. They think, right, well, we've done the brand values piece. We've got 4 words that, everyone on the board agrees with.
This is how we all act now.
Exactly. They haven't actually looked at their business and gone, how do we justify all these things? Do we actually behave that way? Because culture comes from how leadership operates, right? It's often a magnification of individual leaders' behaviours. So is it true that all those individual leaders truly behave in the spirit of curiosity? Honestly, how many businesses have you worked with over the years where you could truly say everything was about the spirit of failure, was about taking a risk, taking a chance, being curious, doing something new? Honestly, 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
Right? There's 1 or 2%.
At best.
So don't put that in a big vinyl on the wall, because actually all you're doing is saying that there's a disconnect between the people who manage this business and the people in this business, right? Because you're basically setting an ideal up that they can't ever achieve because you're not creating the conditions to achieve it. And you're not allowing anybody to ever live up to that stated value of creativity, curiosity, whatever it happens to be, right? So there's an inherent sense of sort of failure from day one. Oh, I can't be that. I can't achieve that. I'm failing. I'm not doing a good job.
I guess it's a number of words that you can use to beat people with in a review.
It's a really unfair fight though, isn't it?
Yeah.
If someone's given a stick to beat you with, well then you can't beat them with the same stick and say, what do you do as a manager to enable me to be curious?
Yeah.
What things are you putting in place to enable a culture that embraces failure? That embraces risk? What is it that you're doing? When we do my 360, am I judged on, should we have that conversation? So I think those kind of brand values are what I'd love to put into 101, because I think 9 times out of 10, 9.5, 9.9 times out of 10, they're really lazy, soft, and they're aspirations. They're absolutely not values. They're not real lived values that beget a culture. And I think a lot of agencies allow brands to do that. A lot of brand consultants allow brands to do that. And a lot of brands management teams allow themselves to do that. Nobody's held accountable for this stuff. It's nonsense. Everyone sees it as nonsense. 9 times out of 10, these jaunty words, in jaunty colours and typefaces are put into grey, soulless offices. And they're supposed to give you something to make you feel all inspired and stuff. And actually, they genuinely have the opposite effect on almost everybody. They depress everybody because they're not attainable, they're not achievable, they're not credible, and they're not lived. They don't beget the culture. So utterly pointless. I really, 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 really hate them.
I think one thing I find with them as well is that they often counter each other. If you read a set of them, there's always one that takes the edge off the other. There's always something that brings them back to the middle. There's always, we're brave, but we're considered. We are collaborative, but individual. They're all always some form of soup of words that lead to a beige mix, right?
There's such a lack of honesty because the truth is, right, this is why I'm so passionate about my mission to put creativity into more people's hands, is life is mostly lived in the middle by most people. Do you know what I mean? They aren't willing to push to the extremes, to the edges, to find out what's there. They just aren't. And that's where most of those brand values live. They are that kind of, as you say, exactly that, brave, but thoughtful.
To an extent, yes.
And they are fridge poetry. They literally are the same 10 words that just get spread around brands. That's that job ticked off. Hygiene factor. No one takes it seriously. Move on. Hang on a minute. Aren't we, as advisors to brands, supposed to really help them to understand and see the truth?
To rage against that,
Aren't we? I certainly do.
So brand values on the wall is number 1, but you mentioned 5. What else have we got? What else are we talking here?
The range and scale.
Okay, let's do it.
So
have you got any pet peeves?
Okay, I'll go for a little peeve. I think it's actually quite a big peeve, but problem spotters.
Yeah.
The people who have a problem for every solution.
100% do.
I've always found them to be people who are quite ambitious, people who want to be more senior than they are typically, because they think that by pointing out the problem, they look like they're the most considered and studied.
Yes.
They're the ones that are saying, hang on a minute, you crazy fools, before you get excited with all that crazy creative nonsense.
All those are nodding. Hold on.
Yes. I've got a problem for you that throws something in the work. Listen, honestly, everything in the world could have been stopped with a problem spotter, right? Every advance, every innovation, every wonderful thing in the world that's ever been created, every amazing film, every amazing piece of music, every amazing everything wasn't product of critical thinking, right? Critical thinking is a wonderful thing. I mean, it seems to be done really well by AI now, but, critical thinking is an amazing thing if what you want is the right answer. If what you want is something stirring and wonderful and magical and entrancing and something that's going to make everyone just stop and feel something incredible, critical thinking isn't the right tool. And so what you really need at that moment is a problem spotter.
No.
Well, see, the problem is you are going to alienate 20% of the audience with that, are you? But actually, you might over-index on your engagement of the other 80.
Yeah.
How about that? And I honestly think problem spotters crush the life out of loads of creative people who don't necessarily feel that they have a loud enough voice to overcome that problem spotter. Because as I say, that problem spotter typically is halfway between junior and senior, wants the whole room to know that, they're a bit of a player, they're ambitious, they want to control things, and they want everyone else to feel a bit bad about themselves. I think that's insidious kind of behaviour. Because you know what? If something is an idea and you start to build on it, well, what if you did this? And how about if we did that on top of it? If it wasn't a good idea, it shows itself. And everyone can go, oh, but we tried. And in that process, you've built a sense of team. You've built a sense of psychological safety in that team. Now, everyone feels, I'm okay, I'm part of this team, I can share, I can build, I can get involved. You build trust, you build enthusiasm, you build all the positives.
That was sort of going to be my point on this, which is I completely agree. It's unhelpful for people to simply dismiss or to simply pick holes for the sake of making themselves look great. Equally, if you are reviewing work and there is a problem, what's the sort of alternative? And I suppose for me, if I'm doing this all the time, reviewing creative work, what I'll tend to do is think, let's pull it back to what's the problem that we're trying to solve? Let's sort of work out the problem and let's review the creative work against the problem that we're trying to solve, or let's try and turn it into a conversation. So what you're not saying, I'm putting words in your mouth here, but you're not saying that we don't have a discussion and that we don't critique work and that we simply say, great, it's creative work, you can have your way. But if your point is just to criticise, probably keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, for sure. If your start point is, I'm going to sit here to find the problem, you're of no value. If your start point is, I want to help us to get to somewhere great, you're of enormous value to me. If as part of that conversation, you've got a reason why it's fundamentally flawed, I'm all ears. But what really matters though is the way in which you do it. Because actually, if you are going to work well with other people, if you are going to build a team, if you are going to collaborate, if you are going to nurture and get the best out of people, you need to create that psychological safety. And I think there's a big difference between people who can constructively dismiss something and people who are seeking to find the issue. I think there's a huge difference.
I think I agree. And I think I agree. It's not just a pet peeve, it's quite a large peeve, isn't it?
It's pretty big. It's fundamental, to culture and nurture. Yeah. And actually making younger voices or less confident voices, it's getting the best out of them too.
Yeah.
You want everyone to come to review thinking, great is going to come from this. I'm excited. Not, oh God, I'm going to have to be careful what I say and say it in a kind of way because they're going to have a go,
So we've got brand values on the wall. We've got problem spotters. What else have we got?
Brand value vinyls.
Specifically vinyl. Sorry, yeah, it's got to be on vinyl.
Pitches. I know this is quite a common theme, pitches and the dislike of pitches, but I've got a particular view on pitches, which is they aren't the client's fault and they aren't the pitch consultant's fault. It's really easy to sort of blame clients. Oh, client's terrible, take advantage, blah, blah, blah. And pitch consultants, I've done a deal with the devil and all that stuff. I don't feel that way at all, right? I think they're simply taking advantage of a situation that has been offered to them. So I'll give you an example. If I wanted to go out for a meal and the status quo amongst restaurants was that I book 4 restaurants across the course of a week, I go for dinner at each of those restaurants, right? None of those restaurants expect me to pay, but they all they'll work harder for me for that meal than they will for anyone else that's paying. They'll lay on the most amazing meal. They'll source the best ingredients, the best pairings of wines, and they'll serve it with more style, more grace, more effort than anyone else who's paying in the restaurant. I will have the most fabulous experience. I'll have every bit of the menu explained to me. I'll have the reasoning. I'll have the freshest, the best, everything. And then I'll go to 4 restaurants, right? And they'll all be thrilled to see me, by the way. They'll all literally lay out the red carpet. They'll probably send a cab to pick me up. And they'll tell me, have you been working out? Have you been away? Oh, we understand you don't like gluten, so we've got some. Just it's a little thing, And they're all laying it on for me, right?
Yeah.
So I go for all 4 meals, and they're all fabulous. And at the end, the status quo is all I'll do is call the restaurant whose meal I enjoyed the most and say, I'm going to eat at your restaurant with more regularity than I eat at the other restaurants. That is what you've won. And that restaurant's thrilled to bits. I'm not going to pay that restaurant for the meal I've eaten. I'll pay for subsequent meals.
You'll give them a promise that in the future you'll pay for meals.
But I won't pay full price.
Yeah.
Because
you've got to beat them down.
Procurement have said, I can actually get lamb for 72p a pound in Indonesia. So why am I paying £18 a pound for dry marsh lamb? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I want the good stuff. But I'm only going to pay what I can get it for in Indonesia. And also, just so you know, I'll go to one of the other restaurants occasionally. Just to keep it fresh.
Yeah.
If that was the status quo of restaurants, right? What person in their right mind would say, this is a disgrace? What punter is going to go, it's a disgrace?
Yeah, this is not fair on those restaurants.
It's not fair on those restaurants. I'm not doing this anymore. Who's going to do that?
Yeah.
And actually, if there was someone that I could call and say, could you put a list of 4 really good restaurants together for me over the next couple of weeks? And I'll get them to have all the tricky conversations. I'll do that then. We are enabling bad behaviour, then we're complaining about bad behaviour. And what's happened as a consequence of that is only the really big global players now, networks, can really afford to pitch. Do you know the ad industry in the UK wastes £9.75 billion on pitching every year?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Imagine that money put back into the business. We could probably do
the extra client value.
We could probably do the job properly.
Yeah.
Right? But it takes 2 years to earn back the outlay of winning that pitch. And you win 1 pitch in every 3 on average. So there's no upside. But at the end of the day, it's destroyed the industry because it's so unbalanced now that we give away all our best thinking for nothing now. And then we try and recoup it on the stuff which is actually the lower value stuff over a longer period of time. So we can't really afford to hire the senior big thinking people, because they're just too expensive. So we juniorize and we juniorize and we juniorize. And ultimately, we end up doing a worse job. So I would say that pitches single-handedly eroded the true value of the industry.
What do you think's the way out of it? Is there a way out of it?
Or still pitching? Yeah, if the whole industry just turned around and went, okay, we're not pitching anymore.
Because it would need to be coordinated, wouldn't it? It would need to be, because if it's so hard as one agency to say, we're not doing it.
It would literally have to be legislated. Do you know what I mean? Because there'll always be someone that would pitch and break ranks, and there'll always be someone that's just desperate enough to do it. And that's what's driving it. It's desperation. It's desperation to sort of survive. And the average bit of business stays in an agency for a couple of years, often not long enough to recoup the cost of running it in the first place.
Okay. That starts the ball rolling, doesn't it? And all of a sudden you think, why are we pushing people out of agencies in their 40s, in their 50s, like you say about juniorising talent? And you think it's because the profit is just being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed.
The bit we're actually getting paid for is the lower value stuff.
Yeah.
So the cheaper I can make that happen, the more I can increase my margin. And that's the margin I need to cover the pitch.
The pitch over here.
It's just been a 20-odd year, 25, 30-year slow-motion car crash. It was okay when business stayed for longer periods of time and pitches were less frequent than they are now. Of course, you want to have a creds meeting or a chemistry meeting or something. But I'm talking about full creative pitch. I'm not talking about creds. But why can't you have a meeting where you really get to meet the people that are going to be in your business? Mm-hmm. You talk to them, you understand what their agency is all about, where the bar is set for them, and see what they've done for other clients. Maybe hear from some of those clients what they've done, what they've achieved, see what their work is. It's pretty much how it works for the rest of the world.
In every other industry.
Yeah. True. But like I said, I can blame clients for it. No, there actually are some decent clients that have said they just don't want to do it. But there's not many.
Okay. I mean, I'm already sold on pictures. Pictures have been mentioned previously. I think it's the first time someone said that it's not the client's fault. And it's absolutely not the client's fault. We've eroded the value in our own industry.
We enable bad behaviours. There's that quote, we teach people how to treat us. And that's exactly right. We teach people how to treat us.
100%. There are agencies out there that refuse to pitch. The challenge is you are making life hard for yourself. But it's hard either way, but there are agencies that say we absolutely don't pitch. But it's like, credit to you. But equally, when bills need to be paid or when you want to work on a certain piece of work, then what is your alternative? So we've got brand vinyl values on the wall. We've got problem spotters. We've got pictures. What else do we have now?
This won't be very popular, I don't think, but working from home.
We sort of touched on it a little bit earlier.
We did. But I want to explain, right? Because it's not black and white. I think one of the things I've realised, I've learned through writing the book, and through coaching creative directors, as I do now, and developing the course with D&AD for up-and-coming creative directors, is working from home. It's got lots of great positives. It has. And I think if you can work from home a day or so a week, it's genuinely a positive, uplifting thing. But for a lot of people, particularly people that are in the earlier stages of their careers, we're missing an awful lot of passed on help, a lot of support, a lot of nurturing, a lot of knowledge transfer, very specifically the knowledge transfer. So I find that I'm getting asked a lot more, could you help to show the creative directors what? And that is stuff that you'd probably learned by osmosis. Whereas now, if you're at home, you're in a bit more of a vacuum. You know, the meetings and the connections with other people in the business are a bit more set pieces. And actually, you're lacking the opportunity to just sit down with a creative, you know, like someone more senior than yourself, like I used to do. I'd always have more senior people around me. And just sometimes it's just you're passing by their office and you just say, out of interest, what would you do with this? Or someone said this to me. What do I do about that? And actually, what we're doing is, I think we're being really unfair on the next generation of talent. We're not equipping them with enough help and support. They're probably doing more than ever with set piece support and initiatives, and that's all great. I'm not knocking it, but the reality is I need boots on the ground. I need every day. I need right here, right now. I need someone to talk to me. I need someone to reassure me. I need someone to help me, you know. And what ends up happening is lots of younger people not having that help to hand. They either do it wrong, you know, lose confidence, get the wrong advice, and so many different things. And then they become managers themselves. And so they sort of perpetuate that lack of knowledge. And I think we're getting close to that first generation of senior leadership now that hasn't necessarily had all the right support, nurture, coaching and advice in their careers as they build up to those positions. And so I think we're getting to a bit of I would say specifically, and this is my area of knowledge, but we're getting to a sort of a creative leadership crisis.
I think we're on the same page. And I think I've discussed this in the past on here, where probably 60%, maybe more, of what you learn is in the conversations that you're not meant to be a part of. Almost when you're junior, it's like you said osmosis earlier. When you are coming through your career, it's what you learn from what people are talking about over there, what people are talking about over there, what you learn from just sticking your hand up and saying, oh, do you mind if I just join in this? It's the stuff that wouldn't happen if you're working from home, because all that stuff's going on outside, but it's what you learn from hearing other people speak or just being around someone. I read something recently about the danger we have these days of our children growing up in an environment where they're only exposed to organised play, not disorganised play, and the development difference that has to children. And I think it's so similar to what goes on in the creative world, where kids nowadays are growing up and their play is football at this time and this person's in charge, and then the activity is everything's based around an organised formal activity, rather than I'm going out on my bike with my mates, I don't know when I'm going to be home, but we're going to go in that direction.
Well, we've got a lot of algorithm now.
And then stuff happens. Yeah.
Everything is sort of, you know, built around what everyone knows we're okay with.
Yeah.
Or what we like.
100%.
Where's the room for experience? And actually, I think there's a whole generation of missing out on all the happenstance, all the accidental stuff, all the stuff that wouldn't be in their algorithm, you know, wouldn't be in their kind of view necessarily all the time they're working from home. So I think we need to be so conscious of that. Like I said, working from home from time to time is brilliant because you get loads done because it's quiet, but actually collaborating with other human beings.
Are you better tomorrow than you were today because of what you've picked up from people around you?
Exactly. I learned so much in that way.
So I think we've got time for the final one. So what is the final thing that you would like to banish?
Pool tables.
Pool tables. Okay, interesting. We are guilty of having a pool table in the office. It's not been used for years and years and years, and we're in the process of getting rid of it. So talk to me.
Well, you should be ashamed of yourself having it in the first place. So there's this belief that creativity is the crazy bit. They need pool tables and wacky things on the wall, and they're all a bit...
They're not grown-ups, not real grown-ups.
They're not like, oh God, don't talk to them like grown-ups. You'll upset them. You know, you've got to talk to them like adult children. Yes. So give them some toys to play with because they like toys.
Yeah.
That's why I hate pool tables, because they infantilize. You know, there's an arrested development that's enabled creative departments. Actually, for me, it's absolutely insidious because it's put in place by people that don't really want creatives to understand the whole process. They don't really want them to control the process, to understand fully what they're doing. So let's allow them to stay sort of children. Let's make sure we always book cabs for them when they're taken to the editors. Oh, because they can't get their own way there, can they? You're probably talking about a grown-up that's got 2 children and a mortgage. Honestly, this whole notion that creative is something silly or something playful at the end of, when all the grown-ups have finished talking, it's time for the creatives. And the pool table in a creative department exemplifies that more than anything. And it encourages irritating behaviour. My pet hate is, in creative departments, is that arrested development. You know, when you've got like 30, 40-year-old adult men and women who act like they're truculent, awkward teenagers.
Yeah.
Because that's what they believe the persona of creative is.
And you start to feed that narrative, don't you? And then you start to create that environment.
Believe exactly, you create that environment. And they are the same people that believe that creativity, that's all, no one but the creative department can do creativity. Are so nonsense. No one but the creative department can do creative execution. Completely agree.
Yeah, we're not saying you come up with ads, but we're saying you can be more creative in your role.
Everyone can bring creativity to their role. Everyone should be encouraged to be creative. The whole business should be encouraged to think creatively about everything. And the whole notion that creativity can only happen in the creative department by arrested, developed adults playing pool, in Converse. Honestly, stop now. It's like some kind of
so cliche.
Nathan Barley 90s cliche that people still encourage today. So the second one I see a pool table in a creative department, I think, okay, that agency has got the wrong way of looking at the world. You got this wrong.
Okay, so we've got 5 things on the table. We've got brand values on the wall in vinyl. We've got problem spotters. We've got pictures. We have pool tables, and we have working from home. Which of the 5 is getting banished today?
Well, see, I'm a really big believer that the whole notion of being unreasonable for positive ends. I think to be called unreasonable should be a compliment, because it means that what you're not prepared to do is accept the standard status quo. You're willing to challenge the status quo for positive end. So I'm going to challenge your status quo of only putting 1 in room 101. And I'm going to say, I think for everyone's benefit, all 5 should go in. So I'm going to leave that with you. Are you willing to think in an innovative new way, or are you going to stick to a rigid line and hold me back?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, because none of them are, it's a little bit like your creative nudge book. All of these are fairly small changes that have a disproportionate impact. So I'm going to class this, I'm going to rationalise, and I'm going to say, you've chosen 5 smalls. So I'll let you get away with what I might call an anti-creative collection of things.
I love that.
Is what we might describe.
That's the kind of innovative thinking that I love.
Yeah, so we'll wrap them up, right?
Well handled.
What I will do also is, because we're running out of time, I will say we don't bring anything back. You've put 5 things in. You're not taking anything out with you. You're taking the piss now. No, I'm joking. So very, very quickly before you go, I do have one thing to ask you, which is my brother's question. Each episode, my brother, who doesn't work in the industry, comes up with a question for my guest. And this week, he wanted to ask you, you wrote one of my favourite ads of all time, The Man Who Walked Around the World for Jonnie Walker. My favourite line in that ad is, young John was smart enough to be lucky. It's up there with Arnold Schwarzenegger's haunting words as he wipes a tear from John Connor's eye in the closing moments of Terminator 2, when he says, I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do. My question to you is, what do you think is the most perfect line in any story?
It's not a line, it's a piece of action. And it was in The Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey. And it was the moment that Kaiser Sose came back into his house and his family were being held hostage at gunpoint by this other gang. Right? And so his wife and his 2 kids who had guns to their heads, and Kaiser Sose walked in and the head villain said, so, what are you going to do now? Kaiser Sose took his gun out, shot his wife and his 2 kids.
So he took away all their leverage. Brilliant.
I always thought, what was so genius about that? Not that I would ever want to shoot my wife and my daughters, obviously, because they are my absolute world. But what I loved was completely changing the dynamic in a split second and removing all the leverage that someone could ever have over you. And I think that resonates with me, because I hate being in a situation where someone has leverage over me. And I would almost always, as Kev would say, cut your nose off to spite your face.
Yeah, well, that's a very extreme way of doing it. But
to avoid being leveraged, because, I want to do what I really believe in.
And there's a point about your unreasonableness here. So you mentioned about being unreasonable, and there's nothing more unreasonable to a positive degree. And I would say this is a great example, which is my brother's asked a person who has had an entire career of being a writer to tell us his favourite line, and it's a line without words. I think that's a brilliant place to end this on. Mick, how can people get hold of you, and how can they buy The Complete Creative Director or The Creative Nudge?
Both are available at all good bookstores and Amazon. And they can always get hold of me either on my website, which is M Creative Industries, and that kind of lists all the coaching that I do and the talks that I do and the brand work that I do, or drop me an email at mick@mcreativeindustries.com.
Perfect. Mick, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, mate. Me too.
So that was my conversation in Marketing Room 101 with Mick Mahoney. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed it, I would love it if you could please send it to just one other person. And if you've done anything recently that you feel guilty about, perhaps you've banged your car door into someone else's in a car park, in just 30 seconds you can buy yourself some instant good karma to cancel it out. You just need to leave a review of Marketing Room 101 wherever you get your podcasts. Finally, if you'd like to buy a used pool table in the Leeds area, or if you'd like to arrange a free chat about how I and the Principles team can help grow your brand, just find me on LinkedIn under my name, Ben Norman. And if you'd like to know more about Principles, just head to principlesagency.co.uk.